Yo, what's up, guys? We're back for another breakdown and predictions video. This week we got a big card, UFC 305, and super excited for this card, man. This main event has been in the making for well over a year at this point. It's a fight that had to happen, that's going to happen, and I can't wait for it to happen. It's just one of those fights that if you're a fight fan, you're going to be tuned in, you're going to have your food ready, and you're going to be ready to watch this and enjoy every second of it. And the money line -110, -110. So just shows how close this fight is, how contentious it is, how much people think both sides are going to win. And that's what a great fight is, man. So that's why everyone's so excited to tune into this one. And I'm excited to break it down. And the whole card in general is just a really good card. So Australia is getting a great product on Saturday night. And besides that, man, I've been putting out a lot of content on the channel and really want you guys to come and support the live streams. And we got a few people that are coming in. I'm seeing them on all the live streams. So shout out to them. It's cool to see a few people that are starting to, be fans of all the streams. And me and Fitz are going to be doing another stream tomorrow night. I think it's going to start at 8 p.m. Pacific time, 11 p.m. Eastern time, a little later. But yeah, we're going to be doing it at that time. And we already put out a video Monday. We had DFS on. If you saw that video, DFS by the numbers, check out his YouTube channel. And then Tuesday, we did a Dana White Contender Series video, watch along, had UFC Bro Picks on there, so check out his channel as well. And yeah, man, so come join those streams. We're going to be continuing to do those streams every week. And if you go in there, you get to ask some questions, you get some free bets, things like that. And like always, patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. If you go there, I'm going to have predictions for a lot of other promotions this week. Some BKFC, most likely. CFFC, I already got my full card predictions for PFL up. I believe there probably is a couple other promotions that'll potentially have lines that I might look at. So always going to be giving you that content. And then you're going to be having access to UFC bets, some predictions early for the UFC. You're going to have access to different stuff like that. So definitely go check it out. Patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. Appreciate everyone that's over there supporting the channel and join that community. And besides that, man, hit the like button on this video. Let's try to get 100 likes. I would really appreciate that. And put a comment down below. Let's try to get some interaction going. And let's get into this first fight of the night. In the first fight of the night, we got the debuting Stuart Nickel taking on Jesus Aguilar, which this is going to be his fourth UFC fight, And Aguilar, man, he's been, an underdog king. He won as an underdog on the Contender Series to get his UFC contract. Came in, fought Tatsuro Taira, which is a rough fight for anybody, and kind of got handled in that one. Got finished in the first round. But his last two fights, he's been the underdog, and he's gotten that job done. So he's been one of these fighters. Or actually, I take that back. I'm not sure if he was the underdog versus Shannon Ross, but he definitely was the underdog in his last fight. Got the win. So he's been cashing as the dog, and he's won 2 fights in a row in the UFC. And so he has that experience advantage. Being Mexican, he's going to fight hard. He's going to have cardio. And Stuart Nickel, he's local. He's going to be kicking off the card for the Australians. And he's pretty impressive, but he hasn't been tested at international level, really. And it's hard to say because his striking, he looks powerful and he's fast, speedy. He'll switch stance and kind of throw from weird angles and kind of a different type of striker, but I feel like he also is vulnerable to getting clipped and getting knocked out. Aguilar, to me, isn't the best anywhere, but on the feet, he does have power. He'll throw those big leg kicks and looping punches, and if he can connect clean on Nickel, maybe he could put him down like he did Shannon Ross, but at flyweight, it's a lot harder to knock guys out. I don't think Aguilar's necessarily like a big power puncher either, even though he got that KO there. And Aguilar just has no wrestling. It seems like his wrestling defense is pretty much non-existent. His last fight, he was just getting taken down at will. But what he's good at is he doesn't quit when it goes to the ground. He'll scramble. He's always attacking that guillotine, even though I don't necessarily think that's the smartest thing. And his last fight, he gave his back up, he would turtle to stand up, and then he was good at turning in or getting on top, exploding once his opponent was trying to get the back and getting on top and kind of rode out a couple rounds and got the win there. But with Stuart, I feel like he's not going to make those same mistakes losing position, hopefully. And I think his ground and pound is going to help him settle Aguilar down a little bit. And I think he's going to get the finish here. I feel like it's going to go under as well. So I'm taking Nico via submission. I think he's going to hit that rear naked choke and have a good performance in his debut. Nico has good wrestling, and I see that being the difference. I think that his wrestling is on point. He's going to hit the double. He's going to use his ground and pound. And what I was saying at the beginning at the breakdown in terms of him needing to show like international level competition is because I don't know how good these guys that he's been out grappling, out wrestling really are in terms of in those departments. But Aguilar, to me, isn't really a big step up in those areas. I feel like his last fight he won kind of because of his opponent losing the fight. And as long as Nico doesn't do that, I don't think that Aguilar has the skills to go out there and beat him when Nico's performing at his optimum. And I feel like Nico can get him out of there. So give me Stuart Nico to win this one inside the distance. And up next year, maybe I'm missing something on this fight. I mean, the line's a little closer than I would have expected, but I'm liking Song Kenan in this matchup. I understand that Song Kenan isn't the most trustworthy guy, but I feel like taking on Ricky Glenn, who's fighting for the first time at welterweight in his whole career. Most of Ricky Glenn's biggest and best performances were at 145. So he hasn't looked good in a long time. He looked really bad in his last two fights at 155. And I just don't know if moving up to 170 is going to be that elixir for him. He hasn't fought in a long time either. Song Kenan, even though he isn't the greatest fighter, he has been putting on some decent performances in recent fights, and he's been fighting really high-level competition, and I think that that's going to help him a lot in this matchup with Ricky Glenn, who's been pretty inactive, and in the fights that he has had recently, he hasn't had very much cage time. I mean, he's got knocked out quick by Drew Dober and Yagos in round one, and even in his last victory versus Joaquin Silva, it was like in 30 seconds. He just caught him and knocked him out cold early. So I feel like Ricky Glenn has just not really fought very much recently. I have seen him do some grappling competitions. It looks like he's been doing them on his Instagram and things like that. But Kenan is pretty strong. He has decent takedown defense. I don't think Glenn's going to be able to take him down. He's not that explosive. I think he's going to be at a physicality disadvantage. And when these guys are striking at range, I just think Kenan is going to hit with much worse intentions. I think that Ricky Glenn might be able to have the wider arsenal and try to pick him apart, but Ricky Glenn isn't going to have that range advantage that he has over the majority of his opponents that he's fought in his career, and I just think that Song's going to be faster than him. I think when Song connects, I think Glenn's chin is gone. I don't think that this 170 move is going to make him all of a sudden become more durable now. I think that it's more just the wear and tear that he's had through over 30 professional fights. And I just don't know what to think about this Ricky Glenn at 170. It could be a cash grab. And I just feel like Song Kenan's going to get the job done here, whether it's a dominant decision win where Glenn is tentative and kind of just content to move around, shoot half-hearted takedowns, and just survive to a decision loss, or an early knockout from Song Kenan. I also like the fact that Song isn't going to have to travel much here. He trains at Tiger, Muay Thai, and sometimes I think that potentially the travel could hurt his performances, getting tired and things like that. So it should be a more optimal thing for Song Kenan here. So I think Song Kenan's going to get the victory here, and give me Kenan Song to get it done inside the distance, actually. And moving along through the card here, I mean, what could you really say about this matchup? Serving up Alex Reyes on a plate to Tom Nolan, and I mean, all you can do on this fight to me is maybe put a flyer bet on Reyes, man, or Reyes by knockout, because Tom Nolan, I do think he's probably going to go out there, knock out Reyes in the first round, probably look really good, and, get the job done like people think, but minus 1,500, I think like him to win inside the distance was like minus 500. it's pretty ridiculous. Reyes hasn't won a fight since 2017, 38 years old. Came back from a lot of medical problems. I think he was paralyzed at one point. So, I mean, shout out to him for coming back. And I don't even think he looked terrible in the brief moments that he was fighting his last fight against kind of a similar opponent in Charlie Campbell. I think is a little bit higher level. But when he got clipped, he didn't show good durability. He got knocked out, finished pretty fast. He did kind of hang in there a little bit, and I liked his composure when he was hurt. I think that does give him a chance to maybe rip one on Nolan when Nolan rocks him and is getting real aggressive, and maybe, you never know, he could knock Nolan out. I mean, Tom Nolan has great offense. He's long and throws those knees up the middle, all those rangy strikes and good speed. But he's been dropped in his first 2 UFC fights, and he got dropped his last fight as a ginormous favorite. So I just think he doesn't justify the line, but you can't predict that Reyes is going to go out there and get the win just with everything that you have in front of you. So Nolan is likely going to go and get this first round knockout. And this is another one where I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. Jenkins is a huge favorite, and rightfully so. He's probably going to go out there, and it's going to be the same thing that happens to Herbert Burns every time. He's going to probably get finished in the second round. And he had some sweet finishes early in his UFC career. He went out there, he got a couple quick first round finishes. He beat Nate Landwehr in pretty spectacular fashion, but we've just seen, if he can't just bulldoze his way to victory these days, he just quits and wilts in there. He doesn't have the cardio, he doesn't have the mental capacity to fight through a hard fight, and I just don't think Jack Jenkins is going to give it to him in the first round. Jenkins is a tough, pretty durable guy. We have to see how he comes back from that injury that he suffered versus Chepe, but I think he'll be fine. He's not like he's old or anything like that. He's going to have a big advantage on the feet. I think he's going to chop him up with those leg kicks that he likes to use eventually. And Burns is going to be kind of on an island, and he's going to look for that way out, and Jenkins is going to give it to him. So Jack Jenkins, second round TKO is the prediction. And up next year, I really like this fight. We got Casey O'Neill, who is in a do-or-die position here, in my opinion. On 2 straight losses, she was 9-0. She went in there, she beat Roxanne Modafferi, which was a big win at that time. That was Roxanne Modafferi's retirement fight, and O'Neill kind of got that opportunity from the UFC to send someone that was a big name out the door, and she got the job done. But in the process, she tore her ACL and kind of didn't get the buzz and the big fight off that victory that she probably would have gotten, and took a long time off, came back, had a really tough fight against Jennifer Maia, and lost that one. And then her last fight, bad showing there. She got hurt and then submitted by Ariane Lipski, and now 2 losses in a row. She switched camp. She's with Fight Ready MMA. She left Extreme Couture, which she was with them for a long time, and it seemed like she had a really good rapport with that gym, so it was a big change. And she is getting to go home, fight in Australia in front of her hometown fans, and she's having to face someone that's 2-0 in the UFC, or 3-0, I believe, 2 or 3-0 in the UFC, 3-0, excuse me, but that has been fighting the greatest competition, that just recently fought like a month ago, is coming back, having to do back-to-back weight cuts in a kind of a short period of time, travel across the world, and have to fight a different type of opponent, totally different style. So optimally, you'd think this fight would kind of favor Casey O'Neill, especially with her original matchup being a heavy wrestler and Teresa Bleda, because I personally feel as if Casey O'Neill has to go back to her grappling roots in this fight. And how I see it kind of going down is early on, I do think that O'Neill will struggle a little bit. Luana Santos is the faster girl. She has the better footwork, movement, and her striking is, I don't think it's great, honestly. I mean, she's real looping with her overhand. She'll throw that big left hook, but she cuts angles fairly well, and then she lands heavy when she connects and has power, so she could hurt you, rock you, and O'Neill is kind of stuck in the mud a little bit. She could be there to get clipped, and if Santos connects early, she could hurt her like we saw Lipski, and then jump on a submission or something like that. And then Luana Santos has really good judo, and when she gets on top, she is a problem. She'll hunt the submissions like we saw in her last fight, but I feel like that judo also gets her in trouble. If you watch her fight with Jenna Bishop, she kept going for these ill-advised head and arm throws instead of trying to defend the double legs, and was just getting taken down and ended up in real bad positions immediately when the fight hit the ground, and it seemed like she got pretty fatigued there in that fight. And that's the game plan that ONeal has to implement here. Luana Santos early is going to be moving, being dynamic, throwing hard. So you have to weather that storm. And then when Santos's footwork kind of slows down, those looping and untechnical striking shots aren't going to be as good. They're not going to be as powerful. And when you can get inside in them, you can start to connect with your jab, with your punches. I do think ONeal has the better technical boxing. She'll go body head. She throws straighter shots down the middle. She actually throws a jab, and if she can get all that going, then she can mix in the wrestling and get on top and start to break Santos, and I think she could do that, push the pace. I feel like she's going to be a little bit more durable from what I've seen, and I think that she's going to have the cardio advantage if it becomes more of a dogfight. So what Casey ONeal can't do is spend that first round getting beat up and then fall into a trap where she's at distance and kind of scared to commit, and then Santos can lower the pace and win a decision. So I think that ONeal has to go in there with a screw-it attitude and come forward, be real aggressive, take some damage early, but use that to get your boxing going and then the wrestling going and get that late finish or decision victory and get back into that mix again. So I'm going to go with Casey ONeal for the upset and predict she wins this fight. And this next one, we got a really close fight that I'm having a difficult time with. I think it could go either way, honestly. I feel like Josh Culiba, the longer the fight goes, it favors him. But then again, when you look at Ricardo Ramos, 5 of his 6 career losses come in the first round. Most of the time when this guy loses, it's opponents that catch him early with the submission, which Culiba has 1 submission win in his career. And I'm not kind of ruling out a submission for him here just because it seems like Ramos sometimes falls into them. And or getting knocked out early a couple times. But most of the time, Ramos has been pretty durable. When fights go past the first round, he's done all right and usually maintained his cardio fairly well. But I do think that coming over to Australia, taking on Culiba, the pace that he pushes and the amount of movement that he comes with is going to potentially get Ramos tired. I think that the best path to victory for Ramos is probably a first-round finish. But how I see these guys kind of matching up and how they're going to look against each other in there is Culiba, he usually only fights in one way. He's really slick and tries to find that chuck hook or the rear crosses are coming in, fast hands, and cuts angles well when he's trying to stick and move. He'll throw those leg kicks, trying to force you to commit, come to him, and then he's going to counter you and clip you up. And if you start to get to him and wear on him, he'll try to wrestle you and try to take you down, which I don't think would be optimal in this fight. His last fight, we saw he was giving the backup real easy to Danny Silva, and that's something that he can't do against Ramos here, but he's good at scrambling, kind of getting out of bad positions, and getting right back on the gas. And I think that potentially if Ramos' old tendencies come in here, he could maybe land one of these front kicks to the body or a check hook rear cross combination and rock Ramos, and then Ramos jumps into a submission or finishes Ramos out early. Or I think Culiba can kind of point his way to a decision. But Ramos also has clear paths to victory through just being dynamic on the feet, staying at distance, but kind of feinting, playing that range game, and then finding your openings to close the gap, get to the back position on Culiba where you should be the more physical guy even though you're coming up a weight, and try to get the back position and get that rear naked choke or just control from the top. But the reason why I'm going to go with Culiba is because I've just seen Ricardo Ramos lose position too often when he gets guys down, especially when he gets to the back as well. And I just feel like Culiba is a really good scrambler, and he's going to make him work to hold him down. And Ramos has done well against his style in certain aspects, like he caught Chavez with that spinning back elbow. Chavez is a guy that likes to stick and move like Culiba. And that spinning back elbow is always dangerous for Ramos, and he has okay striking overall, but I feel like Culiba is just going to have his number in terms of being a little bit better with his movement on the feet. But yeah, I just think that Ramos, 2 consecutive first round losses here. Culiba is coming off a couple losses in a row himself, but I just think that the paths to victory are kind of smaller for Ramos because I feel like he has to grapple hard, and I think he's going to struggle to control Culiba like he did in Algio or Danny Chavez. Like, these guys are a little bit similar to Culiba's style, and I think that he's going to get tired and Culiba is going to start to take over down the stretch, and or Culiba could take him out early, like I said, which has kind of been an issue for Ramos. So Ramos to win, I think, has to either get that early submission or show really good cardio and be able to grapple hard for 3 rounds, and I just think that those are lower percentage win conditions than the ones that Culiba has, so I'm going to go with Culiba. But just the way that Culiba was given the backup to Silva, who's not necessarily a great grappler, makes me not super confident in him here. I think Ramos has a path to victory, but Culiba is going to be the prediction. And I'm going to be pretty brief on this next prediction. I think it's a pretty easy fight to break down. In Junior Tafa, we got a kickboxer. Walter Walker, we got a striker. Walter is going to be significantly bigger, which I think is going to be a factor in the fight. But whenever they're on the feet, I think he's very vulnerable. He's shown a good chin, but he hasn't faced too many great strikers, and Junior Tafa is definitely the best striker that he's probably ever fought and the most powerful in pinpoint. So Tafa, being at home, has the chance to go in there and land on Walker as he's coming in, or maybe elbow him to the side of the head when he's shooting an inefficient takedown and get him out of there, because Walker isn't necessarily the greatest, but Walter Walker can wrestle. He can do it for 3 rounds like we saw in his last fight. Even though he gets tired late, he usually racks up enough control time to get those victories, and it didn't happen for him in his debut, so I think he's going to be hungry coming in here to get that W. I don't really like the travel with him. I think that that's a big advantage for Tafa, but Tafa got out-wrestled and controlled by Muhammad Usman, who is more explosive and is going to close that distance better than Walter, so it's a harder matchup in that way, but Walter's significantly bigger and a better wrestler, so I think that if he can get on the inside and get a hold of Tafa's going to the ground and not getting up, and I feel like that's probably more than likely what's going to happen, so I'm going with Walker via decision. I just don't think he's a lot of ability to finish, but yeah, man, if Tafa wins this one, it's going to be a knockout early, I think. If Walker wins, it's going to be the slow grind, and I'm going to go with Walter Walker. And kicking off the main card here, we got a banger fight, man. We got the Leech, Li Jingliang, coming back, and shout out to him, man. It's been a long time, but he had to battle back from a pretty gnarly injury, man. He had a spinal infection, and I believe he had spine surgery, and he still toughed through it, and now he's back in the cage, and he isn't getting an easy welcome back fight with Carlos Prates, who's an MMA nerd, and he's been getting these really viral, nasty finishes, so it's a really great matchup. I mean, the Leech, he, I believe, used to be Kaposa's, most violent fighter, which, I don't know if he still has that title, but, man, he's all violence all the time, man. In a striking fight, I feel like he definitely is viable to potentially pull the upset here. It's just we don't know which version of Leech we're going to get. I feel like the Leech that we got when he fought like Zaleski dos Santos, the Leech that we got when he fought Muslim Salikov, that Leech is the real deal, man. That guy's a beast, and I know it was bad circumstances. He had to fight a 180-pounder with D-Rod, but I feel like he looked a little stiff in that fight. He wasn't the same dynamic and fast mover that he was back in the day, and now 36, coming back off of a significant issue like he had. Who knows how he's going to look, but on paper, in a striking fight, he should have a chance to get this victory. Most of the time when he loses, guys are taking him down, shooting on him, but man, beating Carlos Prates in a striking fight for anybody is easier said than done. So that's why this is an excellent matchup. I feel like the Leech, he has a decent style to make this difficult early because he's an awkward striker. He has that Sandu Wushu background, and he's always moving his head off center line. Prates likes to throw a lot of those straight punches, those knees up the middle, and if the Leech is using that head movement to get off center line and kind of avoiding that, coming over the top with those big hooks, man, you can't get hit too much by the Leech with those big looping strikes that he throws over the top, and he's so fast, closing the distance with it. And Prates, we've seen him get hurt before, rocked early and kind of getting outstruck by Trevin Giles, a guy that had length and was able to kind of be in and out on him or kind of jab him up and stay on the outside. Prates kind of relies on guys making that mistake, overcommitting, and then he'll land those nasty knees to the body, to the head. You'll land counter crosses, counter uppercuts, counter elbows. I mean, he's a dynamic guy with a lot of finishing techniques, but usually it depends on guys overcommitting and kind of making a mistake and coming to him, or him getting the confidence, kind of getting the read on what his opponent's doing, walking them down, feigning them, being aggressive, and then pulling them into a mistake that way. So I think if the Leech comes in really on point and he's moving well, he's super explosive early on, he's going to have a chance to catch Prates and maybe hand him his first L in the UFC. But just with everything that we have surrounding the Leech, how the Leech looked in his last fight, I feel like he might really struggle to close that gap on Prates and settle into a fight that isn't optimal for him on the outside, where Prates can kind of find that range, chip away at him with kicks, and get the victory. And I think Prates is going to show a lot of respect to the Leech, so it's going to be interesting to see if there's a lot of action in this fight early on. I feel like it could be a little bit slower, but when it gets going, I think it'll get going. And the Leech usually always comes in ready to go and make fights all action. But yeah, man, this one that I could see going over potentially. I mean, maybe Prates hurts him and then gets one of those slick front chokes or a submission, because he does have that ability. But the Leech has never been knocked out. He's a really durable guy, and unless Prates becomes the first guy to take him out with strikes, it could go a little bit longer. But I'm gonna go with the young veteran, I guess you could say. I mean, they both have a lot of fights, but I'm gonna go with Carlos Prates and pick him to get the job done. And so initially, I came into this matchup totally thinking that I was gonna predict Jairzinho to win this fight, but I'm going to do a 180, and I'm going to go with Tuivasa to get the victory in this one. Ultimately, I looked into it a little bit more. When I was first thinking about it without tape, I just thought that Jairzinho, he's going to catch him with that jab or with a big shot as Tuivasa comes in, rock him, and then accumulate off that and eventually get him out of there. And that's still a possibility. But I think Tuivasa is very live in this fight, and I'm going to pick him because I feel like even though he's been finished with strikes more times, he is the more durable fighter in my opinion. He's a guy that's a little bit better in a firefight, and I think he's going to come forward and be aggressive. He's going to chop those legs, and Rosenstruck is low volume. He's going to be looking for those counters, and he's going to have to find that shot that hurts Tuivasa, where he can stun him and then put a combination on him and put him away, or just knock him out with one punch, which I think is possible, but it's difficult. And if he can't do that, Tuivasa is going to be putting more volume on him. He's going to be going into the clinch, potentially throwing elbows. He's going to be backing him up. And I think Tuivasa can overwhelm and get Biggie Boy out of there. I feel like Biggie Boy beats a lot of these really slow heavyweights that he can keep at a distance and kind of just pot shot or just catch a knockout early, guys that don't have the most punch resistance. But I don't think Jairzinho is necessarily like the biggest one-shot knockout artist type of guy. And I think that Tuivasa can eat a couple shots potentially to get inside and get his work done. And I feel like he's just going to be busier, and he's going to eventually kind of get to Rosenstruck and get him out of there. So late first, second, or a second-round finish for Tuivasa. And I think Bam Bam's going to get back to winning ways in front of his home crowd here. And in this next fight, I'm leaning towards Gamrot here. Hooker coming back after a pretty long layoff and took a lot of damage in that last fight that he had. And Gamrot won 3 in a row since the loss to Beneil, so he's kind of got his groove back a little bit, even though people are discrediting or kind of not disrespecting, but just pointing out that he had kind of a lackluster performance versus RDA, which is true. But this is probably a hard matchup for Hooker, man. I mean, it's hard exactly to say. Hooker's went in there against a couple grapplers way back in the day, like Jim Miller, Gilbert Burns, and he was able to get him out of there early. And if he can close that gap and put those combinations like he was doing on Jalen Turner on Gamrot, man, he could knock him out. But he hasn't fought very many wrestlers, and obviously he's going to be looking to time that knee, and he's going to be trying to overwhelm Gamrot, maybe look for that guillotine that he likes to. But I just don't think that he's going to be able to stop the takedowns. When I've seen him have to defend takedowns, he's gotten taken down so easily. Even Turner took him down in his last fight with relative ease. And Gamrot, he's going to be shooting a ton of takedowns. He's going to be shooting a lot of single legs, which is going to be a little bit harder to time knees. And I feel like if he can get him down early, he has a chance to pass his guard and get a quick submission like Islam did. But even if Gamrot has to grind his way to decision like he usually does with a ton of takedown attempts and takedowns and maybe not the greatest control, I think he's going to do that too. I just think that Hooker is going to struggle to get his game going. He's going to be overwhelmed with defending takedowns, not really get his offense off, and end up either getting dominated and submitted early or just drowned for the duration of 3 rounds. So for me, Mateus Gamrot is going to keep the train rolling and get this job done. And for the co-main event, we got Kai Kara-France taking on Steve Erceg. Kai Kara-France coming off a razor-thin loss that almost everyone thinks he got the win in his fight with Amir Albazi. And Steve Erceg coming off a super close loss in his own right to the champion Alexandre Pantoja in a title fight. So both these guys are going to be hungry. They're coming off, like I said, razor-thin decision losses. Kai Kara-France, he has to prove that he's still viable in this division. He's over 30 years old at flyweight. I think he's 31, which isn't the oldest, but at these lower divisions, you age a lot more rapidly. And he's had some issues in terms of, I guess, concussion symptoms, which got him pulled out of the Manel Kate fight, and he hasn't fought in over a year, so that does concern me. It's a big red flag when you start thinking like that, because that could not only affect your ability to take a punch, but your mentality in terms of wanting to get hit too, which could affect how you fight. So Kai Kara-France is kind of having a lot to prove here, and he's getting thrown right into the deep end, which I'm sure is what he wants because he feels he's still probably the best in the world. So, but I feel like when you're looking at how these guys match up, Kai Kara-France, he's going to have to be moving, cutting angles, throwing a lot of kicks, I feel like, trying to catch Erceg as he's coming in and then get out of range like a ghost. But I think it's going to be difficult for Kai Kara to stay out of boxing range with Erceg, who's just a really big guy for the weight class. I think that Erceg is going to be walking him down. He's going to be able to eat the shots that Kai Kara-France lands on him as well. And I feel like when he gets inside, he's going to be landing heavier shots, doing more damage. And I could see him start to get to Kai Kara with the pressure and the power that he's throwing with, and just having the superior boxing that makes Kai Kara shoot on him. And I could see Erceg at that point wrapping up a neck or circling to the back in a rear naked choke, or just starting to control him and dominate the fight by getting on top. So I think Erceg could win by pressure and grappling, or knocking him out with the boxing. I think he could win a 3-round decision just by pressuring him on the feet. With Kai Kara, I think he kind of has to be perfect. He has to be able to stick and move, frustrate Erceg, hit, not get hit, and do that for all 3 rounds. And I think it's more likely that Erceg is the one that gets his hand raised in this fight. And I think Erceg can get the job done inside the distance, whether it's a club and sub decision or rocking Kai Kara and making him shoot a bad takedown and then submitting him, or just knocking him out on the feet. I think Erceg has multiple paths to finish. So Usyk, to me, is going to be the prediction here. And finally, we got the big one here, the battle for Africa. No, I'm just playing, but man, I mean, we got an amazing fight. Dricus Du Plessis taking on Israel Adesanya, and just an awesome clash of styles, a fight that had to happen because of the history between these two guys, and just your quintessential perfect UFC main event, man. This is going to be awesome. Adesanya is obviously going to have the crowd on his side. The last time that he was over here fighting in Australia, he lost the belt to Sean Strickland at a really bad performance. So I think the crowd wants to see him redeem himself. He's motivated to come back and redeem himself. He looks in great shape. Adesanya looks bigger than ever. And man, usually when he loses and he kind of starts to get doubted and things like that, that's when he comes back and looks really impressive. So you could see a new and improved, kind of reinvigorated Israel Adesanya here, even at 35 years old. But Dricus Du Plessis is very confident. It seems like he's always been confident in this matchup with Adesanya, really wanted to fight him. And now he's finally getting his wish, except this time, instead of what he probably anticipated, fighting Israel Adesanya being the challenger, he's the champion defending his belt. And we'll see if he can actually get a title defense. We've seen that Alex Pereira won the title. He lost in his first defense. Israel Adesanya lost his first defense. Sean Strickland lost his first defense. So we'll see if Dricus can kind of break that streak and become one of the first guys in a while at middleweight to defend the belt after winning it. But Israel, he's vying to become the second or third. Randy Couture maybe is a 3-time champion in one division, but I know for sure John Jones is a 3-time light heavyweight champion. But either way, I think Israel is, one of the very few people that will be a 3-time champion of one division if he gets it done. But man, stylistically, they both have a big path to victory as well. I mean, you see Dricus, the guy's definitely a tank. He's going to be the bigger, more physical, stronger guy. And what I think is Dricus, what he has to do here is not bite on the feints like he did his bad in the fight with Darren Till. If he's doing that, big reactions to feints, drawing out real awkward strikes, Adesanya is going to knock him out, I think. But if Dricus can have a little bit more composure and just be willing to maybe eat a shot as he's coming in, or just kind of know that Israel, being the counter striker that he is waiting for you to overcommit or kind of give a reaction so he can kind of shoot a shot in there. So don't give him what he wants, come into the range without reacting much to the feints, and then back Izzy up with these combinations and try to either get in on the legs or just touch his chin and test that chin durability of Israel, who got knocked out by Alex, got dropped by Strickland, and we don't exactly know how durable he is at this point in his career after so many fights, over 100 career fights. But Israel, I mean, more than likely, if he loses this one, I think Dricus is going to be able to get in on his legs against the cage, take him down, put him on his back. And Israel is usually good at popping right back up, but if Dricus can do it enough where he takes him down a few times and kind of starts to wear on Izzy, then maybe Izzy will acquiesce and kind of let Dricus settle into that top position and ground and pound away on him, and that'll be kind of the beginning of the end for Izzy, I feel like, if that starts to happen here. But Dricus on the feet is going to be having to throw a lot of volume to offset the rhythm and not allow Israel to get into that mode of being able to be a sniper. And on top of that, if he's just going, strike for strike in a pretty striking fight with Israel, he's going to lose that 10 out of 10 times. So he has to bring that awkwardness, bring the volume, pressure through, and not react as much to the feints, and look to mix it up. And I think that's a very viable way for Dricus to win the belt. But for Izzy, I mean, optimally, Dricus is going to react to his feints, and he's going to be able to pull shots out and knock him out. But if Dricus isn't reacting to the feints, Israel has to be ready to either stand his ground and land big counters and then angle off, or just be able to find another option. Use a lot of footwork, because he can't allow himself to get backed up and then in that pocket with Dricus, who I think is going to be hitting a little bit heavier, and also, being able to grab him up and wear on him with his size and just being the better wrestler. So Israel, I think if he gets off to a good start early and can pressure Dricus, back him up, and force bad takedowns out of Dricus and force Dricus to have to be lunging and being kind of awkward like he is sometimes, Izzy's going to win this one. But if Dricus can kind of get that range early and back him up and, pressure through the feints and do what I think he should do, which is mix it up, I think Dricus is going to get the win. So it's a -110 fight for a reason. I'm going to go with Adesanya by knockout. I think that Adesanya is going to catch him and get him out of there at some point and regain the belt for the third time. So Israel Adesanya is going to be my prediction there for the winner of this fight. And, yeah, man, I think it's going to be an amazing matchup, though. So there you have it, guys. That's a full card breakdown and predictions video for UFC 305. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, hit the like button. Let's try to get to 100 likes on this video. That would be awesome. Like I said at the beginning of the video, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Pacific time, 11 p.m. Eastern time, we are going to be doing a live stream. It's going to be more of a betting live stream where I break down the fights, give you guys potential free bets on certain matchups on the card, and kind of tell you where I think the value is instead of just a pure prediction. And you can ask questions. You can kind of pick my brain. I have a co-host on there, Fitz, as well, so he's going to be on there answering whatever you have as well. So come join the conversation tomorrow and come to that live stream. That would be awesome to see more of you guys over there. And like I said, comment down below. Go to patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru for PFL content, for BKFC content, for a lot of other promotional content, for UFC bets. And yeah, man, as far as my most confident pick on this card, for my most confident pick, I guess I'll go with Jack Jenkins for the parlay of the week. For this card, it'll be a parlay, I'll say, of Stuart Nickel and Keenan Song. I'll go with the first two fights of the night as a nice little parlay to kick off the card for you guys. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you guys later.